Hello again, folks. Today's shout out is to any of you who volunteer. My daughter had a scrimmage last night against an older team. The 14U team and the 12U team in our league scrimmaged. And I was asked to ump it, which, let me tell you, was a challenging affair because turns out these kids really cared about that game. And I tried my best to call good balls and strikes. And throughout it, I was paying attention to the coaches as they were coaching the girls on their teams, and I realized just how many hours these people put in, not getting paid, in the heat, with all of the logistics that go into organizing something like a team, and they do it out of the goodness of their heart. And I know that this goes beyond sports to, nonprofits rely on volunteers, you name it. And so if you spend your time volunteering for a good cause, I wanted to say cheers and give a quick salute. Um, so with that being said, today's video I am tremendously excited about. And the reason for it is I've been working on this for quite some time. It's took me a while to put together, and I am very pleased with the results. As you might have seen on a recent stamp hunt with Junior, I found the Unitrade specialized catalog for Canadian stamps, and that spurred me into a reorganization of my collection of Canadian stamps, and I am very excited to share that with you. I used my personal system for this collection. It is a storage method. It's not an album. It's not, putting together a collection that has all of the Canadian stamps, for example. But it is my method for storing stamps that I use until I purchase a nice Davo album, which I may at some point. But I did, however, find this cover, or this empty album, which I was able to use to store my stamps. And here you go. So I am going to do a quick review of my collection. I am also going to talk about the importance of condition. I know I have done that in other episodes. I'm going to do it again in this one. And my overall goal is to pass along a passion for Canadian stamps because I think they are abundantly cool. So what I've done is I've started if a stamp is less than $50 or so of catalog value, I have put them on my card system, and then I am storing them in sleeves like this. And then for stamps that are $50 or more, I am using top loaders. So I will start by showing you the more, the still collectible stamps, but the ones that have a slightly lower catalog value. I love the beaver stamp so much. I think that design is just so cool. Whenever the condition was so poor, I just put filler, so that, I still want to hold on to these stamps because I think they're cool, but I just put filler as the catalog price. And herein starts the queens. The queens in the Canadian stamps are endlessly fascinating to me, from the large queens to the small queens, to the different color variations, to the different varieties. Once again, with the specialized album, you are able to dive into all of the different varieties. For some of the more common ones, I just put them in glassines. And at some point, when I have the time, I can go through these and try to identify if any of them are the more rare varieties. But I think the queens are so cool. And then you move into this series, which is one of my favorites in philately. The higher denominations are incredibly sought after. And so when I look for a country to focus on, what I like are beautiful stamps, history, and then collectability too. And there are some extremely collectible sets and stamps in Canadian philately that are really fun to chase after. And then into the later queens. And again, this is just my storage system. This isn't necessarily putting together an album collection. This is just how I choose to store them. I like that I get to flip through and review. I like that when I store them on mounts like this, the condition becomes quite clear. And then into the Edwards. That's a particularly great condition. It is never hinged. It's also very, very well centered. But it's still, you know, the catalog price is $30, so I did not include it in my finer set or finer collection. And then for the more common and yet still decent catalog price, what I did was I cut out cards, you know, the stock cards, and used a portion of it, which I then slid into the sleeves so that I can hold more than one pretty easily. A little bit of a rarity with a pair that's never hinged, so I wanted to hold on to that. I really do love stamps that have ships on them, transportation in general, so I wanted to be sure to hold on to that. And again, this is my personal collection, you know, so I just kind of keep stamps that I think are cool, regardless of their value. And then the back of the book, I love airmail stamps, and so I have held on to those. And at some point, if I do get into a Davo or probably Davo, because that's what I use for Canadian stamps, I'll go through all of the back of the book and I'll sort through, and then I'll try to complete the collections. This one's I got a kick out of. If anyone could tell me about this Cinderella stamp, I'd appreciate it. It is the Hobby Club out of Winnipeg, Canada, from 1908. So if you have any information on that, please feel free to drop a comment in the comment section below. And then on a recent video, I showed you that I found these postcard sleeves, sleeves. So I use them for some of my blocks and the souvenir sheets. I love that so much. Trains on stamps are cool. And old time transportation is cool too. Again, it's the combination of history and art for me, along with a topic that I think is cool. So that one is especially cherished by me. I just think it's neat. And that is, I believe that's one of the Capex, yeah. So that's a nice little special release. Tribute to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So I had a boss who was from Canada one time, and I live in Minnesota. And when I first met him, he started talking about living in Canada, and I chuckled and I said, well, you know, I'm just going to view you as one of us because we share a border, and I think we share an awful lot of cultural traits too. So I don't know what it was about Canadian Mounted Police that made me think about that, because that's one thing we certainly don't have in common. Well, actually, come to, you know, we do have some parades that have police on horseback. So there you go. Nice natures. Okay, so then for the more common bulk stamps, I just put them in big glassines, and I used those postcard sleeves to store them. Again, this isn't just my storage system. This isn't for putting together a collection. Now, the next bit I love about Canadian stamps are the provinces. There are some incredibly collectible stamps from the different provinces that are fun to chase after, and I just think these designs are really cool. And then what I did was I still labeled them as Canada, but I put an asterisk, and on the bottom or on the back of it, I put the different province. Newfoundland stamps are incredibly well designed, I think, and so I really enjoy collecting those too. And then last but not least is Prince Edward Island. So here is these are all mint never hinged, with that exception. So I wanted to be sure to store them properly. And that is my, let's call it $3 or so catalog value to 50 or so catalog value stamps from Canada. I love this cover. It's just, I get a sense of pride and a sense of completion for something that I put together like this. And so I get such a kick out of this. So those are the more common and yet still collectible stamps from Canada. Here are my finer stamps. And let me do a quick reorganization here because they are out of order. And what I wanted to say about condition, I have, and I think I've shared this before, I have a set of Scott catalogs way up here that I use for cataloging my stamps. They are an older set. I think they're from 2014, 2015. And the reason that I haven't purchased new ones is because I'm not in this hobby for money. So whether or not the pricing has changed isn't as important to me as the date and the numbers and the sense of whether or not they're collectible. But one thing that I really noticed this time going through with the specialized catalog, this guy, is just how important condition truly is when it comes to valuing stamps. Because what this one does is it adds a breakdown of very fine, and in the earlier ones, and then it also adds the bit about how much the never hinged and original gum adds to it by percentage. And so I went through my Canadian stamps and I was very, very particular about what constitutes a very fine versus a fine. So very fine stamp, by the description within this book, is perfectly centered. No perfs are, I'm looking at an imperfect one. Perfectly centered, no perfs are torn. There is no disturbance to the gum. That a very fine stamp is a perfect stamp. And so if it wasn't a perfect stamp, I marked it as a fine. So you can see the difference just by this one. Perfect stamp 70, not perfect stamp 20. That's a huge difference. And the Scott catalogs break them down, but they also break them down mint used. And there's a tendency to, I guess what it did was it made me understand that in the Scott catalogs, the high value is reserved for the absolute perfect stamp. And if it's not absolutely perfect, it goes into fine, and the resulting difference is significant. So for these, I was very, very strict in cataloging them based on condition. And here you go. So these are my finer Canadian stamps. I love this one. This is the color variation. I'd also add that when it comes to queens especially, having a color wheel is really important. They make a tool that allows you to identify the different color shades. I didn't have one. So there are instances like this one where I wasn't entirely certain on the color, so I just left them blank, to be honest. I love that stamp. Look at that cancel. Isn't that great? Some might argue with me about whether or not that's a very fine stamp. I think it is because of the cancel is really cool to me, but it is off-centered. I love that stamp. This is one of my favorite stamps because the condition is so great. It is, again, when you get to this level of scrutiny, it's slightly off-centered. But the cancel is so fine and beautiful. The perfs are in such great shape. To me, that still is a very fine, but... And again, I mean, it's in the eye of the beholder. That's a slightly muddied cancel, so maybe that's not very fine. This is an example. It's such a great stamp, but it's off-centered, so I categorized it appropriately. This one somewhat disappointed me. I found this in an album a while back, and it was one of the reasons why I purchased it. And from the pictures in the listing, I thought this was new, but when I got it, you can see a tiny, very faint cancel on the far bottom. So it's still a lovely stamp. It's just not new. And again, since I need to verify the color on it, so I have not categorized it. Never hinged. There it is. I love this stamp. I just love that stamp. It's one of the more sought after in Canadian philately. I sure would love a new one. What a gorgeous stamp. I almost forgot some of my favorite ones. There are my airmails. Particularly fine stamp, a little off-centered. That is a great stamp. And into the provinces. I do not have any of the very, very fine provincial stamps. They would be in a different storage system if I did, but I love that stamp. Look at that dog, the Newfoundland dog. And I love the seals. I think that is a great design and a beautiful stamp. And there you go. Those are my high-end Canadian stamps in my storage system. I get such a kick out of Canadian philately. There is so much to learn. There is so much to like. There is so much to research and to collect. So to all you specialists in Canadian stamps, I get it. I think these stamps are gorgeous, and I really, really enjoy collecting them. And maybe one day, if I find the right used Davo, I will pick it up and I'll try to complete the collection. So we shall see. Once again, to all of you who volunteer for causes, thank you. And thanks for joining me on another episode. If you enjoyed today's video, please do like it and do subscribe to the channel. It means a great deal to me. Until next time.